Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and I'm here with David Hall. He is Principal Product Manager at National Instruments. David, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You recently published a really good piece on our site. I recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. It's called Curbing the Cost of Wireless Test. And if we could start off with a little bit of background from that about how the evolution of testing has been impacted by the increasing number of bands that every smartphone now has to cover.
Yeah, well, it's really a couple things that happened over the past few decades. You know, we've seen from GSM to UMTS to LTE that wireless devices themselves are becoming incredibly more complex. And we see this with more wireless standards, more bands that it has to support. Back in 2000, a GSM phone supported maybe 2 GSM bands, and we all got excited when the World phone came out a few years later. And now that same device is operating in more than half a dozen bands, and now it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and NFC. So really we're talking about the cost of tests, which is becoming dramatically challenging given all of the changes with these devices.
But at the same time, the cost of a lot of smartphone components are falling.
That's exactly
So what's happening to the cost of test?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think one of the points I made in the article was, when the first mobile phone came out, it was something on the order of about $10,000 in today's dollars. Today, that wireless piece, we have the expectation to have that for $100 or less. And when it costs more, it's because it does more features. In fact, you see that even in the chipset cost, where the chipsets are going down. And so that's really the challenge for a lot of test engineers today, where they're tasked with trying to figure out how to test these devices for less, even though they're testing more. And so it really boils down to getting more efficient with how they're conducting their test plans.
So what are some of the ways to get more efficient?
Well, the big thing is parallel test. We've seen, a few years ago, everyone was testing one device at a time. Now you're testing 4 or 8 at a minimum, and people are looking to test more devices than that going forward.
And what exactly has to be tested? Every call, it has to make a call, it has to test with data. Each phone has to do that?
That's a good question, because that's actually changed as well. 10 years ago, when you were testing a mobile phone, that mobile phone physically made a call to a sort of a simulated base station, but that's very time consuming. What's happened in the last few years is we've seen people implement what they call non-signaling test modes, and there you're controlling the device through a digital interface, and you're telling it to transmit or receive some RF signal. And so there's a lot of innovation that's happened in sort of the test techniques of these devices. And in fact, National Instruments has worked with a lot of the chipset vendors to make sure they're efficient with how they control a chipset digitally so that it can go through these test modes more quickly.
Okay, and you recently introduced something new that can test, I think, 8 devices at once?
Yeah, we recently at NI Week, which was back in August, released the wireless test system. So this is a all-in-one, single-box, PXI-based test system that can test up to 8 devices at one time. And of course, that gives engineers an opportunity to implement fairly sophisticated parallel testing. And of course, the instrument's also reasonably fast, which allows people to do faster measurements.
Now, what's going to happen to testing as more devices become connected that aren't even smartphones? All around us, we're going to see different things become connected to wireless networks, and people will have to test them, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, there's really a lot of challenges if you look at the future of wireless test. We're just at the beginning of doing parallel test and testing, up to 4G today. There's a lot of changes on the horizon. So with 5G coming along, that's only less than 5 years from the point where we're testing mobile devices potentially, and that's going to require new RF interfaces, new cabling, new fixtures, more bands again. So that's one of the big challenges that's happening. And the other thing that's happening is we're seeing wireless devices used in a lot more applications than just communications devices. You go back 10 years and that's what wireless was. Today, a lot of us have non-communications devices that have a wireless feature, like a refrigerator or a thermostat. And when you look at the research data, the projections are that in the next 10 to 15 years, the majority of wireless devices are non-communications devices. And what that means is that a lot of the engineers testing those devices have to come up to speed on RF test techniques and wireless test techniques.
And you do a lot of training in that area, right?
Yeah, we do. NI is investing a lot in tools that can educate our customers in better test techniques. And we launched a website called RF Academy a few years back, which equips engineers with sort of the latest testing techniques for various wireless standards.
Are you hiring a lot right now?
We are, yeah.
Do you find that there are a lot of talented people coming out of the chip and device companies? I know there are a few of those that have had to cut back recently.
Sure. NI has consistently found talent whenever people lay off, just because there's a lot of good engineers, particularly when you see across the board cuts. It's pretty easy to find some fairly talented folks.
Is it easy to talk people into moving to Austin?
Not very difficult, actually. Austin has a great tech community, a pretty good quality of life, and of course, at National Instruments, we work on pretty innovative products too, which is quite compelling.
Okay, so what are some of the key skill sets for people that might be looking to make the move into test?
Well, it's an increasing requirement to understand software, actually. We've seen a lot of people come from multiple backgrounds. We see people come from the test engineering or from the hardware background or the software background. And really what we found is a cross-training that's necessary on both. So for the customers that are for our hires that are coming from a software background, we really have to put some work into making sure they come up to speed technically on the hardware side, and of course vice versa. So it's really a hardware plus software background that's required in order to do this.
All right, great. David Hall, Principal Product Manager at National Instruments. Thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you.